Hey everybody, Josh Sayerton of World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by economic analyst John Sneisen. Now, of course we've gotten a lot of hate mail for our Canadian dollar video that we did back in January. The video has gone viral. It's at 60-something thousand views now, and we're quite proud of it. And there's a lot of comments. The one I'm about to read, and we're going to ask John a question here, and it should be quite entertaining. The one we're about to read is actually quite nice compared to most of them. Quite tame. You should see some of the comments that people, when people just comment on a whole video that's like 12 minutes long with all these facts, and they just say, "You're an idiot." That says a lot about them personally and not much about us. So anyway, John, we got a question from Matthew Evans, and he asks, 2 months later, the dollar is back up to 77 cents. What do you have to say? And he also added that fiat is monopoly money, but with the Canadian dollar's relation to oil, it will never drop to zero. So what say you, John?
Well, let's go right into that when it comes to the Canadian dollar being backed by oil. First of all, it's a fiat currency, and it's not backed by oil because it's not written into the currency itself. The currency that we have today in Canada is backed by nothing other than the belief that they can tax you to death. So that's the only thing that backs it right now. When it comes to, you said about actually oil could save the Canadian dollar. Maybe it could save the people. But I don't think it's going to save the Canadian dollar at all. I'm going to take a look at Norway, for example, when it comes to keeping the value of the dollar. Like, I don't know if that's what you kind of were thinking about. The Norwegian krona has had a massive loss in value, and it's actually in Norway it's way more major part of the economy. The oil. We have about 20% of our GDP is oil extraction and selling that. So in Norway, we've seen a rapid loss, and my dad we could interview my dad if you want to, and he could probably tell you that oil didn't help the value of the Norwegian krona from losing its value from him when he was a young boy. Things have gone up 400, 500, 600% since he was young, and it definitely hasn't saved the value at all. Now. Let's get back to what you just said about the Canadian dollar being up at 77 cents. Again, actually right now it's down to about 66 right now. So you see it's down again. And of course it always fluctuates. Yeah. But our main thing that we were talking about in the video is just the Canadian dollar is the fiat currency. So we were kind of putting a little bit of a fun spin to it, saying that it would go to 5 cents to the US dollar. What we more, if you listen to it, we're talking about that it would actually lose all of its value compared to other things, and wouldn't be able to buy anything with it. When it comes to going back to that, actually the value of the Canadian dollar, is there anything else that could save us other than the oil? The Canadian dollar is going to lose all of its value at one point. It's going to go to zero. That's what all fiat currencies do. If you believe that it's not going to happen, then you believe in that history is wrong, because history has proved us, I don't know the exact number, but at least 400 plus times.
Going back to 1024 AD with the Chinese first paper money currency in China.
Oh, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's so many common misconceptions about this. Actually, we got dozens and dozens and dozens of comments about how the oil is related to the Canadian dollar, and of course we do have what they call a petrodollar, but it isn't what is holding up the dollar in the long run. It's just constant debt accumulation at the printing of the dollar. I mean, tell us a bit about how the money is created and how that creates its own debt.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the monetary system today, in easy terms, what happens is the government wants to spend money, like the Canadian government, because that's what we're talking about here, just promised when they got in that they're going to spend $10 billion extra money that they never had before. So they're going to have to borrow that into existence. Now, take that 10 billion Canadian dollar, they print it, and then they put it into the banking system. Now that $10 billion goes into the banking system, now you can times that by 10, and then you have $100 billion available to use to borrow out money. Now, Canada actually doesn't even have a fractional reserve banking system. In Canada, we have a zero reserve policy, and you can go to the Bank of Canada and read the white paper on this, and they talk about how several other central banks in the world also have this policy, like New Zealand, Sweden, UK, and so on, where they actually entrust the bank to keep the proper reserves to protect from a run on the bank. Now, thinking that the bank is going to keep that appropriate amount there, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But as I said, it's very easy. Like when it comes to printing money, like it's usually the government that spends that money into existence, and as soon as that's created in the Canadian dollar that they borrow, the banking system can take, as soon as that's in a bank account, they could just take huge advantage and then create a whole array of new money that didn't exist before into existence. Now, I believe that the Canadian dollar is going to fail. Don't get me wrong on that at all. Like the Canadian dollar is going to fail horribly, as any other currency have. And I don't believe oil is going to save the Canadian dollar. I believe oil is going to save people's lives because they can use it for fuel and so on.
And it might put it off a bit longer, right?
But the correlation, of course, is that, like the value of our commodities, because we are a commodity economy. It's not just oil; it's any other commodity that we produce. The most of it is, of course, oil. But there's a whole array of other commodities. So we are a commodity economy, and when you are a commodity economy and commodities are down, then it's just a natural that with the trading and everything going on, the commodities traders and the forex traders say, well, that currency is less worth now. So it's just a naturally gradual move when it comes to the dollar losing its value, because of that it's attached to an economy that is based on commodities. And it's mostly Western Canada, like from Manitoba and out, that really have these commodities. So I think that the commodities are going to save us. Yes, I do believe that in the end, because it's good to actually be self-sustainable as an economy and be able to produce everything yourself. And we were able to produce all that food and everything here in Canada. Now, the Canadian dollar is not going to be saved because of that. The Canadian dollar is going to fail. It might be might stay alive, but then they might devalue massively in the very near future, and then
look who's paying for it.
It's not going to keep its value just because that we have oil. It's a fiat currency. Don't get that wrong and think that it's backed by oil, because it's not. Oil is its own commodity, and it doesn't say anything that our fiat paper money here in Canada is backed by that oil.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions, and it was one of the most controversial videos I think we've done was that Canadian dollar video, and people didn't understand the context. We were having fun with the idea of, half a cent, of course the US dollar is going to collapse too. We weren't saying for a second that the US dollar is not going to collapse. We're looking at the Federal Reserve. I'm pretty sure the US dollar is probably going to crash before the Canadian dollar, right?
Could. Because we got commodities. You got to remember that. Like, we actually have something to back our economy with. And it might be Canadian dollar that's going to emerge from that, unless we actually put up a proper governmental system here in Canada and get away from the being a part of a royal empire. So,
and we're not saying any certain date here. We're saying that it's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually, and people can't really debate that, because we've seen how people will watch it fall and fall and fall, and then it'll go up just a little bit, and people say, look, see, everything's okay. But then you see it fall and fall and fall more, and then it goes up a little bit again, and everyone's saying it's okay, and we got to learn from our mistakes. I mean, we just saw the Bank of Canada, or the Canadian government basically sold off almost all of its gold, basically all of its gold. And if that doesn't concern you, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, let's just leave with this final comment. When it comes to the Canadian dollar losing its value, it doesn't matter if it's a 1-to-1 to the US dollar. All currencies today are printed into oblivion. So it's a race to zero, basically, that we're watching. So though that, it might move the ratio between Canadian dollar and US dollar, doesn't mean that the paper currency is not going to fail at all. All currency are just rapidly losing its value, and that's just the way it is. But if you had currency system, you just gotta go and read in the history books. It's quite simple if you go and study this stuff. History always repeats itself with this type of a paper system where you allow people to print as much as they want. It's just nobody's gonna be able to keep away from printing money when you can actually do that and then go and buy stuff. So.
Well, and as Matthew Evans asked, what do you have to say? Well, Matthew Evans, what do you have to say? This is Josh Sayerton and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth.
Be the change.